All of a sudden, analysts burst into the room, holding a piece of paper and waving it and saying, "I have a manifest from one of the airplanes." Okay, case closed. This was an Al Qaeda operation. The president had been informed, of course. Michael Morrell was with Leslie Greenberg.
And I'm sure that Mr. President, I believe it is a non-state actor. I believe it is Al Qaeda. I believe it's Bin Laden. And I would bet my children's future on that.
We had a video conversation with him in which we gave our initial impressions of what had happened, who was responsible. He said, "Rally a worldwide coalition. We will find them and destroy them." Now it's
As a kid, I loved puzzles, especially the 5-minute mystery kind of puzzles. Where you had a little story and a handful of clues and you had to figure it out in 5 minutes. I liked the pressure. Little did I know that that would be very helpful many years later.
It does seem weird that I wanted to join the CIA after Vietnam. It was protesting, people didn't think the CIA was cool. I knew that the analysts at the CIA did a lot more than was the public perception. They were really trying to understand the world to help the nation. I wanted to do that. I was lucky as an undergrad to get an interview with the CIA and they accepted me. In 1993, there was a small group in the CIA focusing on Bin Laden, mostly women. When we first stumbled upon Bin Laden, we learned that he was related to a very wealthy influential family. He's got he was a rich benefactor, hoping that, and in resisting the Soviets.
والمواصل المساعدة علينا بالمقاومة إلى إخراجنا في أفغانستان.
This legend grew about these dedicated fighters in the cave in Afghanistan trying to protect their country from the evil Soviet Union which invaded. And the United States was also fighting against the Soviet Union. So the feeling was that these are noble fighters.
U.S. support for the rebels totaled hundreds of millions of dollars, one of the largest covert operations ever run by the CIA.
They're told
Today, no one ever thought would come.
The era of Soviet military intervention in other countries is now over.
Bin Laden was coming off this high of having won in Afghanistan with this idea that this is the way we're going to change the regimes in the Middle East. He wanted to usher in a new Islamic empire.
And he said he wanted to get the Western influence out of the region.
Bin Laden hated America for intervening in the Muslim world and for propping up these infidel leaders.
Bin Laden saw the United States as supporting everything that they believed was wrong. Liberal democracy, that you don't have to be religious, that women should have an equal role in society. These are all things that were anathema to that fundamentalist movement where Bin Laden and his friends were. So they had a meeting, and out of that, Bin Laden formed Al Qaeda. And that was 1988. We followed this progression. We had known that Bin Laden was operating training camps and safe houses against the Soviet Union. When the war was over, we discovered that he turned those camps into training camps for Islamic militants to go out and attack other countries. We knew they had terrorist capabilities, but we didn't know to what extent they were going to come directly after the US. In 1992, there was attack against US servicemen in Yemen. We did some investigation, and the little breadcrumbs led back to Bin Laden. And that's when I personally came to understand that he was coming after us.
4 Americans have been killed this morning to explosions in Saudi Arabia. It was surfacing from the CIA and Osama bin Laden. 210 people died in bomb attacks on U.S. embassies, the worst acts of anti-U.S. terrorism in years.
Osama bin Laden, possible mastermind at the East Africa bombings.
5 American sailors were killed in the worst terrorist attack against a U.S. ship in modern history.
The prime suspect named Osama bin Laden.
I put dots on a map and you could see it like in a belt all across the world. It was almost everywhere.
It seemed to us the beginning of a new wave of terrorism.
in the months leading up to 9/11, we had intelligence reporting that Al Qaeda had a threat against American targets.
We've not seen a spike in reporting like this before.
All of the indicators were that something big was happening.
We got reporting that people in Bin Laden's network were calling their mothers and telling them goodbye and stuff like that. I mean, something very serious was about to happen.
People we were following in Afghanistan were leaving the camps. There was a public statement by Bin Laden saying there will be a big surprise.
They're talking Armageddon. This is going to be bad.
We sent in the vicinity of 100 messages to the FAA, Customs and Border Patrol about potential for trouble with airlines and terrorists.
Over the past 5 years, we warned that the most likely targets would be, quote, national symbols, such as the White House and the Capitol, and symbols of U.S. capitalism. Terrorists are developing new ways to attack aviation targets.
Morning, July 10th, the head of the Al Qaeda section walked in my office. And they said, Chief, the roof's falling. Fed indicators are just off the chart. This country's got to go on a war footing now.
I briefed the president about Bin Laden planning multiple operations. Bin Laden attacks may be imminent, spectacular attacks, history-changing attacks.
I remember walking into the head of the Al Qaeda unit. Against one wall, there were piles of paper, and they were all stacked right next to each other. What is all that paper on the floor? He said, oh, that's when we had the disaster. Thousands of Americans are dead. We have a copy of every briefing, every threat report, everything that we gave. So I said, it's a lot of paper. Yes, it is.
The frustrating thing about all of this reporting was it was not clear about when, where, or how.
The second tower in the World Trade Center is teetering.
The other tower of the World Trade Center has just collapsed.
It's no exaggeration to say that we woke up every day thinking it's on us.
You can't not feel responsibility for not stopping an attack that occurred on your watch. And so you can't help but like question yourself. You know, just question yourself a lot.
I got into my car and started driving home. And it was on that drive that I broke down and I started to cry. And I cried all the way home. It was our job. Our number one job. And we failed.
فهذه أمريكا قد أصاب الله سبحانه وتعالى في مقتدر من مقاتلها فدمر أعلن مبانيها فلله الحمد والمنة.
But I remember the thought I had was nothing will ever be the same. And it turns out it wasn't.
We knew the Taliban government in Afghanistan provided a safe haven to Bin Laden.
I said something to the effect of, look, we just need to tell to give us Bin Laden or we will rain hell on them.
We did give the Taliban an opportunity to turn Bin Laden over, and they refused. On Saturday, President Bush wants to have a meeting of his war cabinet. I walk up to the president, who is talking to somebody from State Department, encouraging him to give diplomacy a chance. And the president said, fuck diplomacy, one war.
I've asked the highest levels of our government to come to discuss the current tragedy. We will find those who did it. We will smoke them out of their holes. We will get them running. And we'll bring them to justice. We're at war.
Thank you. We're stepping out now.
The definition is whatever it takes.
The meeting that followed was to decide what are we gonna do. I didn't know whether CIA would be in the lead or whether it would be the Defense Department. The Department of Defense has military plan for almost everything. That's what they do. They plan for war.
The President of the United States turned to Donald Rumsfeld and said, how long, Don, before we can invade Afghanistan? And his response was approximately 6 months. Cofer Black, chief of counterterrorism, said he would be behind George Kennedy. He didn't have a place at the table, but Cofer's not afraid to speak up.
You ever read much about General George Patton? He will tell you half of leadership is theater. I stood my chair a little closer to the table, put my elbows on the table. He turned to me, he looked me right in the eye, and stared at me for 5 seconds. And then I said very simply, Mr. President, and I will not tell you what Isaac meant, but it very succinctly and graphically will translate to.
If you let me do it, I'll have flies walking on their eyeballs in 6 weeks.
That's what I'm talking about.
And Bush said, you're in charge. You go for it. Donald Rumsfeld almost shit his pants. The worst attack on the United States since Pearl Harbor. He was supposed to be his big boy defending America. And the whole thing just got handed off to an intelligence officer who wasn't even a cabinet member 7 seats away.
I want justice. And there's an old poster out west, as I recall, that said wanted, dead or alive.
Close curtain, end of game.
Cofer Black called me on the phone and said, they're going to invade Afghanistan and your name has been presented as the person who's going to lead the biggest part of it. I went home that night and I told my spouse that I would be leaving for Afghanistan. She didn't want me to go. Her response had been, let someone else do this for me. Now I'm going. I will go no matter what. No matter what. I go to the office and there was Hank Trump, who was tasked to organize the deployment to Afghanistan. We used the code name Jawbreaker.
There were only about a half a dozen of us in what was a new unit.
We started to assemble small teams, case officers, paramilitary officers, linguists, communicators.
None of the CIA teams was bigger than 8 people.
And we had 13 teams that were total.
We would be sending in teams behind enemy lines to work with our Afghan allies, the Northern Alliance, who were already fighting the Taliban to find, engage, and destroy Al Qaeda.
Brief the teams. In a crisis like this, you've got to hammer through to people. This is different.
His orders were very clear and very blunt.
He told us he wanted to have Bin Laden's head put back in dry ice.
He wanted Bin Laden's head on a stick.
Cut his head off and bring it back in a box for the president.
This isn't a Walt Disney movie.
He could be specific, graphic, and very clear in his message to us.
I was working with the operations side on trying to track Bin Laden all day long, every day. And so when he made an appearance on television, it would be analyzed to death. Was this recently recorded? Was the backdrop new? Is he saying something new? Can we tell by the backdrop where he is? How did the recording get to Al Jazeera? Can we find the courier? All of that kind of analysis happened every time he's found. Where could he be? We were going to war full out against Bin Laden.
Tonight we are a country awakened to danger and called to defend freedom. Whether we bring our enemies to justice or bring justice to our enemies, justice will be done.
The President has clearly been preparing the nation for war.
We flew in one helicopter, very heavy, with 10 of us.
just 2 weeks after the events of 9/11.
Man said to me, there's an agreement between us and the military. We will send a CIA team on the ground, and if they are alive after 2 weeks, the Special Forces team will be permitted to join you. I said, well, how about they come with me when I set up? Because I'd like the additional guns. He said, that's the deal. From the very beginning, we're trying to find Bin Laden, doing everything possible. We used the warlord to set up a meeting between us and the leading Taliban.
The Taliban were a radical Muslim movement who governed Afghanistan. Their hatred of the West aligned with bin Laden, so they gave Al Qaeda safe harbor there.
In order to get bin Laden, we had to go through the Taliban first. People from their intelligence service agreed to come to the meeting under the principles of Pashtun war. One warlord will have sanctuary, both sides can come in and have an equal meeting there and both be safe. So I sent a team forward to do that. I told them when you get there, if these Afghans are cooperative, do the deal with them. If they're not, kill them or kidnap them. Your choice. Our guys asked them, where is Osama bin Laden? And their answer was, Osama who? That was kind of a mistake on their part. Our guys drew weapons on everybody, tied them up, gagged them, threw them in the vehicles, and drove away with them.
By November, there were approximately 410 Americans on the ground throughout Afghanistan. The various teams were heavily outnumbered.
I went over overhead photography with Hank Crumpton, and we could see that at the Khyber Pass and in other places of entry into Afghanistan, there were traffic jams of 5 and 10 miles long. It looked like every jihadist in the world was trying to come in to join the fight against the infidels. Us.
There was an inherent weakness to what we were trying to do with the very limited resources that we had. We were outnumbered by the enemy, but we had air power.
Just before September 11th, I was briefed into an armed drug program. I remember asking you, am I going to have to show you one? Because I didn't know how I felt. I was 23. But I think after September 11th, obviously, I feel like a kid. Junior in college, I went to a career fair, and the CIA was at a table there. Here's my resume. We really honed in on this leadership position that I had in my sorority. I was a vice president in my house. Sometimes it would be really difficult. Sometimes you're expelling women for making really poor choices. I was willing to sacrifice popularity and being liked for the betterment of the entirety of my sorority. And that spoke to sort of, I guess, my moral turpitude. I don't know, but that's what they said. I was placed in a counterterrorism center. So with Jawbreaker, we started identifying targets, and we would rely on a lot of intelligence that we were getting from the ground folks.
Our team, the CIA team, is working with the Northern Alliance, and we're running sources across enemy lines. And I have people with what look like cell phones, but really they're GPSs. They walk up to a building, they see it's a Taliban building, and they mark it. And then they mark another, and they mark another. And now I send that report back to CIA and say, okay, Taliban at this building, Taliban in this facility.
We're targeting those individuals and taking them out. I think Al-Qaeda was like, does someone have a GPS up their ass? Like, why are we all dying? I don't think they fully understood, right, what this was. That probably made the ground folks' jobs better.
I had the zone in Afghanistan, which controlled the east, and probably 95% of the Al-Qaeda in the country were in my area. The Afghan forces on mountaintops with radios all looking for Bin Laden. Finally, we got reported that Bin Laden was in Kabul. We decided, okay, we're gonna make a push on Kabul. We're outside of Kabul on the Shamali Plains. Special forces teams came and joined us. There's about 25 CIA or special forces alongside 5,000 Northern Alliance on the Shamali Plains, standing against 15,000 Taliban and Al Qaeda. They outnumber us at least 3-1, maybe 4-1.
The synchronization of the Northern Alliance with U.S. air power really was crucial to executing the plan.
So we coordinated for air support, set a date. It was the 9th. The Northern Alliance got ready to attack. At dusk, you could see headlights of thousands of pickup vehicles, 8 guys in the back armed, start coming out of the city and start to crowd in on us to be in a position to attack us. Their intention is to kill everyone in the Northern Alliance and kill the Americans who they know are there. They had a very, very large force. But what we have that they don't have, air power.
Once the U.S. air power was introduced, having worked most of my career with the U.S. military, I knew what was coming. I knew what was coming.
I pushed half of my team to be right on the front line with Northern Alliance to the sword. The Northern Alliance lined up and got ready, and then the planes didn't come. They didn't come.
There was an artillery duel. The Taliban were in bunkers and trenches. They were well concealed.
There's no bases to go to. There's no place to protect yourself. You're exposed. Air assets are thousands of miles away. Now we got 15,000 people right on top of us. I told our officers, no one was allowed to surrender. If you were going to be overwhelmed, save the last round for yourself. Because if not, Al Qaeda would torture you on video, put that out all over the world, and you would suffer horribly. And unannounced comes all hell from the airport. B-52s are bombing that front line. AC-130 gunships are coming, fighter aircraft are coming.
The Taliban positions couldn't withstand U.S. air power.
They actually just abandoned their positions and ran. And then as they collapse, the Northern Alliance moves forward against their positions.
Since launching their breakout offensive last Friday, U.S.-backed anti-Taliban forces have made strikingly rapid progress. Yesterday alone, more than 400 bombs were dropped on Afghanistan.
Their commanders claim to have killed nearly 1,000 Taliban troops in just 2 days.
We were all moving faster than anyone thought. And so the Taliban literally, on their own, began evacuating the city. Well, I was told that, look, the White House wants you to hold everybody back. We don't want you to go in. Stop 5 miles outside the city. But we didn't do that.
Small number of American troops is in Kabul tonight.
Following a lightning-fast 4-day advance, anti-Taliban rebel forces now control the capital of Afghanistan.
The sudden departure of the Taliban could not have been a more welcome development.
People accepted us, cheered for us. The population turned on the Taliban, beating them up, arresting them. The Taliban had treated them terribly, they were monsters.
The expectation everyone had of this turning into some sort of a quagmire didn't come about. In fact, Kabul had fallen by November.
It seemed to be working, particularly when Kabul has fallen and no American troops were dead.
We toppled the Taliban with 3 soldiers on the ground. I mean, that should last, to be honest with you. The Taliban were crushed in 45 days. So
It was a pretty successful operation.
One by one, the bodies of more than a dozen firefighters are carried out of the rubble that was once the World Trade Center. 300 of New York's bravest are missing or confirmed dead.
For me, 9/11 feels deeply personal because it happened at home. The two towers were 3 blocks away from my high school. I used to go during high school lunch break to feel so cool and big and go to the shopping center in the World Trade Center. Many of the first responders were the parents and siblings of kids I grew up with. We were still reeling from the emotional disaster that is 9/11. Stories about recovered bodies. What do you do with the abandoned cars? But there's another piece of the puzzle of what 9/11 means. In taking over Kabul, many civilians died.
Week 3 of the air wars begun controversial. Bodies of convicts on a Kabul street have led to fresh questions about the accuracy of the American attacks. Pictures from the Afghan capital are said to show the aftermath of the latest raids. Houses destroyed by a stray bomb, lives shattered.
There was no room for that piece of the story in the American conversation.
On the issue of military involvement, fully 80% of Americans, according to most polls, favor it now.
Should U.S. retaliate even if innocent people are killed? Yes, 66%. The civilian casualties just disappear because Americans were still wrestling with thousands of Americans having been killed.
We must defeat the evildoers. We must round them up. We must bring them to justice. And that's exactly what we're doing in Afghanistan.
Fundamental question is, can you kill your way out of this? People ask that all the time. Can you kill your way out of this? And the answer is no. Because some other people in some other country are going to go, did you just see what they did? And then you're going to have more terrorism. Bombing more people isn't going to stop that. Unfortunately, that's how the United States reacts to something like that. I mean, I'm an analyst. I know what my country does when there's a Pearl Harbor or something like that. We go to war. Whether it's a good idea or not a good idea, that's what we do.
By early December, all the major cities in Afghanistan really had no urban stronghold.
we have accomplished some aspects of the mission, no doubt, but we did not bring the God's head back on ice.
And what got away. It's a big area. It's hard. You gotta find out where he is.
He had captured one of his radios. And we had an expert familiar with some of the voice. So he was listening to the short range radio, and he heard Osama bin Laden telling his men, "Hey, I'm sorry I brought you here. This is a disaster. It's all my fault." The short range radio had a range to it. In the mountains, the range was less. We got him.
They moved to the mountains. they had a stronghold in Tora Bora from back in the Soviet Afghan days. Whole tunnel network up there. That's where the intelligence said that they had retreated to.
Just called all my guys together and said, we're gonna send our own people in there right now. That four-man team starts going up the mountains with 10 Afghans with donkeys. And they get about half a day up, and one of those donkeys was packed with an RPG. And an RPG round goes off, and it blows the donkey into about 20 pieces. A couple of these Afghans died too, so they had to bring them down, they gotta bury them, we gotta start over again. They go back up the mountain, very, very high, and they work their way in deep. And they get to a position where they can see down from up on top of there. They have spotted him. Bin Laden's got 1,000 guys, tanks, armored vehicles, all sorts of stuff, and they were down below our guys.
We were outnumbered. There was just no way that we could engage them to the idea of capturing and killing all of them, including Bin Laden.
You can't do this with small numbers of U.S. forces and Afghan irregulars. You need a battalion, 800 Rangers. You need to drop them in up there. Like Holden Hank, he made the appeal.
I briefed this up the chain to Cofer, to the president. And I said, we need to have reinforcements. Rangers, Marines, we need help in the mountains. I was very clear that this was a matter of hours. Otherwise we would lose a chance.
I'm trying to tell the military, okay, this is the time for you to come in with massive force and end this thing. Secretary Rumsfeld reported and he said, well, this doesn't have anything to do with us. This is a CIA operation.
We were not getting ground support. Where is the ground support? Where are the ground troops? Why are we not sending ground troops in? We're like, okay, well, we're not sending ground troops in, then we're definitely not gonna bomb. When you bomb something, people that survive run away. So you need more people there to scoop them up. So either we don't drop any bombs, don't let them know we're there, or rain down everything and bring the ground troops in at the same time. And so that's what we thought the plan was going to be.
General Mattis at Kandahar with Marines, they could have deployed.
They just weren't willing to do that. There was just a tremendous reluctance to put in U.S. military forces. So their solution was let's bomb the place.
No ground troops, we are gonna bomb. All of us did not agree with what they were doing. But what am I supposed to do when the orders are coming from the president? That's the commander-in-chief.
I really wasn't in a position to question the president on the policy. That's not a CIA officer's job. And so I called Gary back and explained to him he has to go with what he's got.
We had 4 Americans, 1,000 enemy down below. If we didn't eliminate these people now, everyone that escaped the country was a potential pilot to fly another airline into a building. One of my guys was a combat controller. Combat controllers call in airstrikes from the front. I said, do it. He gets up on the line, he calls in B-52s, B-1s, F-15s. These 4 Americans by themselves did airstrikes for 56 hours.
They had a lot of cave systems. It takes a lot of bombing to close down a cave.
It was some of the heaviest bombing since World War II.
Every aircraft in the U.S. arsenal attacked those guys.
They brought in Blue-82, the largest conventional bomb the United States has. So big we have to drop it off the back of a transport plane.
After the Blue-82
was killed, cut off his head, send it back, or his hands, or if you can, you'd rather take a blood sample and we can match DNA because we needed forensic evidence that he was dead.
We had people up there looking for pieces of Q-tips, trying to get DNA. We thought we had killed him.
It's over in Tora Bora. Al Qaeda's last stronghold has fallen.
The Afghan militia were celebrating what they were calling the final defeat of Osama bin Laden's Al Qaeda.
Our victories today have been very decisive, very important. All the tunnels, all the camps of Al Qaeda up on the mountain of Tora Bora have been captured by our forces.
We're still trying to sort out who we have and who we don't have, and who's been killed.
Maybe he still is there, maybe he was killed.
The U.S. is using ground forces, so if bin Laden is killed, the Americans will be able to bring back proof he is dead.
There are new unconfirmed reports that he may be dead.
About 6 months after that, I was in the United States at a friend of mine's home, having dinner with him, and the television was on. He surfaced. There he was.
We now know Osama bin Laden is alive. Was wanted is still around.
The last thing the administration wanted to see.
Once bin Laden left Afghanistan, he could go anywhere. And now what is he up to?
Where's the terror attack in Madrid?
Deadly bombings in Bosnia.
Bin Laden franchised himself. You had branches of Al Qaeda everywhere.
Bin Laden was in search of what's my next 9/11.
Al Qaeda's capabilities are rebounding.
فإني أقول للشعب الأمريكي إننا بإذن الله ماضون في قتالكم وسنواصل العمليات الاستشهادية.
He has a personal fortune estimated at $250 million. He lives in a cave atop a range of mountains in Afghanistan. From there, he controls a web of financial, logistical, and strategic assistance to Sunni Islamic groups engaged in what they consider a jihad or a holy war. ABC's John Miller recently traveled to Afghanistan for a rare interview with bin Laden.
The bin Laden interview was a calculated risk. Yes, we took chances. It was dangerous. Journalists put pressure on themselves. I have to get on the inside with one of these people, not just looking at another propaganda video. It was May 1998 in Islamabad. We were thrown onto a flight that led to buses, the back of pickup trucks, where there were no roads. Finally, we get to the top of this mountain. Everybody points their rifles in the air and starts shooting tracer rounds. There's a little boy next to me. He has an AK-47, and he's firing it this far from my ear. And I push the gun away, and he brings it back, and he finishes the magazine. That was Osama bin Laden's son. One of the fighters says, I have good news for you. Mr. bin Laden has agreed to answer each one of your questions, but we're not going to translate the answers. And I said, well, then how am I going to ask the follow-up questions? And he said, there won't be follow-up questions. We begin our interview, and we go through the questions. Did you finance plots to blow up airplanes over Pacific routes filled with passengers, assassinate the Pope in Manila? Was there a plot to kill President Clinton? And I'm sitting there kind of nodding along with it, wondering Well, what do we have? At the end of the interview, I went back to our fixer in the back and I said, what did he say? He said a lot. We need to get the tapes and we need to get out. Once we got back to the hotel and we had the main translations done, it was groundbreaking. It was frightening.
We do not differentiate between those dressed in military uniforms and civilians. We're all targets in this fatwa.
Holy shit. He was inserting a message. He wanted the interview as a platform to publicly declare war on America.
You will leave when the bodies of American soldiers and civilians are sent in the wooden boxes and coffins. That is when you will leave.
This is a game changer.
The U.S. reportedly had the chance to capture Osama bin Laden, but didn't. Captured al-Qaeda fighters say bin Laden was at the Battle of Tora Bora. Washington Post reports he escaped because the army failed to send troops after him.
We had bin Laden in our sights. We needed to kill bin Laden in Tora Bora, and we didn't. And now we were pretty confident bin Laden had escaped into Pakistan.
I was a little angry with the administration because you just let him go from a place where we had him relatively contained and we knew where he was to now basically the wild, wild west of Pakistan, which is really impossible to find people in. And so a little angry as well.
Could have ended it and moved on. Would have given some closure to the survivors in New York. This one was the best shot we ever had. And I'm sorry we didn't take
I thought I told him. I thought, well, we're gonna have to get back at this. Probably won't be me, but someone else is gonna have to get a shot at this.
Another Osama bin Laden propaganda video surfaced today in the Arab world.
In this video, bin Laden does not look like a man under attack or running for his life.
He is not escaping this. This is a guy who 3 months ago was in control of the country. Now he's maybe in control of the cave. He knows that we're in a hunt. And I like our position better than his.
But bin Laden is still unaccounted for, but not continue.
Question remains, where is bin Laden?
There was concern that once bin Laden and other al-Qaeda members left Afghanistan, they could go anywhere. They could disappear across the border into Pakistan, into Iran, take flights and go wherever they wanted. The problem is those possibilities are infinite. He'd been evading our security for years even before 9/11. We were tracking him since 1996. So he wasn't stupid. He understood what he needed to do to keep himself safe. So finally, we started thinking, is there another way we could look at this? The question isn't, where is bin Laden? It's who might be with bin Laden.
I was an FBI agent tasked in investigating al-Qaeda attacks around the world and interrogating its members. The mission was not only capturing Osama bin Laden, but also preventing further attacks. After bin Laden escaped to Ebola, US forces were searching for any clues that might lead us to him. And in al-Qaeda safe house, there was a tape that they found where bin Laden was explaining the operation. And every time he's explaining 9/11, he points at the person who's holding the camera. And he says, Mukhtar. God bless Mukhtar. In the same tape, Bin Laden's son, who was a little kid at the time, found a piece of a drone, and he started yelling, Mukhtar, Mukhtar, come and look at this one. The guy comes to the camera, take it, look at it. This tape made it clear that Mukhtar was part of Bin Laden's inner circle and could be one of the few people who knew where Bin Laden was hiding. So we're trying to figure out who Mukhtar was. We did not know what he looked like because he was never shown on tape. We were only working off his alias, Mukhtar.
We talk about Bin Laden, but I felt that at this point in time, he was stationary, that a lot of this work was being delegated out to his henchmen. They are the ones who are doing all of his dirty work. He had all the faces of all his little lieutenants that were all over the place. Bin Laden was, of course, at the top. After him was his deputy Zawahiri. Next in command were a handful of lieutenants that were also very close to Bin Laden. There was Abu Zubaydah, who was suspected to be Bin Laden's chief operations guy, and a mysterious operative known only as Mukhtar. And so there was a lot of leads that we were pursuing, and in the midst of that, we thought another attack was coming.
When Al-Qaeda escaped from Afghanistan, they didn't go into hiding. They continued to plot and to plan.
The country remains on high alert after U.S. intelligence heard what they call suspicious chatter.
A disturbing incident on board an American Airlines jet this afternoon. Officials say a flight attendant discovered a passenger carrying a bomb on the jumbo jet.
There is no doubt this man intended to commit suicide and take the plane down.
Left explosives in his shoes to trigger, quote, a major disaster.
Richard Reed, so-called shoe bomber, was Al-Qaeda's first effort to rebound on another airplane with another terrible attack.
Could you imagine if U.S. airliners fell out of the sky?
America is on guard tonight in a whole new way.
You're talking about a major corporation, and one office gets wiped out in an earthquake. Does that mean the organization doesn't work anymore? Does that mean they don't move their headquarters somewhere else? They had bases all over the world, and these plots were already in motion.
We felt like we were at a dead end. But then we got a lead on Abu Zubaydah.
Abu Zubaydah was someone who was in charge of logistics, recruiting, planning operations.
Abu Zubaydah as Bin Laden's right-hand man, his operations guy.
Through a series of intelligence breakthroughs, we started to develop a pattern of travel for Abu Zubaydah in Pakistan. We were able to narrow his travel down to, as I recall, about 17 locations. And so we made an unprecedented decision. We decided we would try and go after 17 locations at once. When the raid occurred, he escaped and was jumping from roof to roof and was wounded quite severely.
He was taken to a hospital, and my partner and I were called in to interrogate him. Abu Zubaydah was badly injured. One of the medics came over and he said, if you want to talk to him, you better talk to him because he's septic. He's probably dead in the morning. I told him that there's not an option. We'll do anything we can to keep him alive. In the hospital, we continued to keep the interview going. Everybody was shocked he was cooperating. And he named an Al-Qaeda operative who was planning an attack. I said, oh, I showed you a picture of that guy. Can you tell me if it's him? He said, sure. My partner had a Sony device, looks like the Palm Pilot. And on this device, he had photos of all the most wanted terrorists. And he went down there, like, hitting the stylus, past it. So I said, is this the guy? And he said, no. What I did not realize was that my partner had zoomed in on the wrong photo. So I said, oh, sorry. I said, hey, Steve, you gave me the wrong photo. He said, by the way, who the hell is he? Tell me. He said, this is Mustafa. So I looked at the picture. Now I'm very anxious. I want to see who the hell is Mustafa. And it's a picture of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, also known as KSM. He was a terrorist we had been tracking for years. I had no idea that KSM was a member of Al-Qaeda. I was totally shocked. But that was nothing compared to what happened next. And I said to Abu Zubaydah, since we're on this, why don't we talk about him? He said, he's the one who did 9/11. I connected all the things in my head together. KSM had been bin Laden's accomplice all along. He was the architect, the visionary, the mastermind of 9/11.
Once Abu Zubaydah revealed KSM's involvement in 9/11, we realized KSM had been obsessed with the World Trade Center for years.
In 1993, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed pulled off this attack on the World Trade Center in New York. He works with the local cell. They get the van, they set up the explosives, and then they put a bomb into the World Trade Center building.
He thought the structure would move enough to shake and even topple.
He wanted it to fall down. He said later he wanted to kill 100,000 people. If they just had a little bit more explosives and moved the truck 1 inch to the right or left, they might have toppled the building. It was that close.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed just never rested until he could bring those towers down.
After the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, he had a bag full of plots and ideas, but he didn't have the money to make it happen. He finds his way to Afghanistan and to Al-Qaeda, and he finds his way back to Osama bin Laden, and he pitches this idea of, we'll target the World Trade Center to take care of that, because we tried it before and it's still standing. But now the plan kept getting bigger. We'll target the Capitol, we'll target the Pentagon, we will set America back on its heels like no one has ever done.
If there was a keystone individual in this whole plot, it was Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Bin Laden was the inspiration and the charismatic leader, but Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was the designer, the architect.
After 9/11, he went into hiding. Through a series of classified spy operations, we learned that he was in Rawalpindi in Pakistan.
That activated our operation to capture Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
CIA and Pakistani agents hit the two-story villa hard, bashing in doors and sweeping up anything of interest. Family members said everyone was asleep when they came. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was caught in his underwear. It was his birthday.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is an American astronaut. Al-Qaeda's top planner is now out of action.
Bin Laden and KSM were close. When we caught KSM, we thought it might take us to Bin Laden. It was a very significant capture, the most significant to date.
This was the first time the CIA had a serious lead on bin Laden. And expectations were big.
The capture of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was very important because it disrupted things he was planning. And we learned from him about operations that were plans in process?
What we learned from all the intelligence that we gathered was that bin Laden was micromanaging the organization. He was approving assignments. He was deeply involved in attack planning. He was very much the active head of Al Qaeda. And their capabilities were rebounded. I was concerned about additional attacks.
A van full of explosives detonated during 7 prayers this morning. The group that says it's tied to Al Qaeda claims responsibility.
It felt like a ticking time bomb situation. Because the homeland was absolutely on their list of places they wanted to attack.
I was sitting at my desk in headquarters and I just heard, "Fuck you." They blew up a train in Spain.
These are nothing but cold-blooded killers. They do not value life the way we value life in the civilized world.
Bin Laden basically franchised himself.
You start to have these Al Qaeda groups happening everywhere. There was only one Al Qaeda on 9/11, and then all of a sudden you have all of these groups.
It was just like when something would happen next. When's the next attack? When's the next attack? When's the next attack?
I was in London in a meeting and somebody walked into the room. Multiple attacks in London, dozens killed.
A series of bombs exploded in the London mass transit system during the morning rush hour, wounding more than 700.
Bin Laden was creating this fear. You should be afraid on your trains, on your buses, in your streets, at your hotels.
There was attack after attack. And we knew that there could be another attack at any time, anywhere.
He wasn't stopping or slowing down. We had to find a lot of. He was his cult of personality. He was the key to everything.
KSM provided us information about Al Qaeda as an organization. But there was one thing that he wouldn't talk about. KSM was protecting bin Laden as fully as he could.
After 9/11, one of the things that happened pretty early was discussion about doing what came to be called enhanced interrogation. The U.S. government built a detention center in our Guantanamo Bay military facility on the island of Cuba. They did that to interrogate prisoners outside the civilian legal system. Now, why wouldn't you interrogate them on U.S. soil? Well, because you want to do some stuff that wouldn't be allowed.
These were not soldiers, these were the hardened top leaders of Al Qaeda. When you had them in your possession and they refused to offer any information, the thought was that some coercive measures might help unlock some of that information.
The emotional atmosphere in the office was revenge. These people deserve whatever they get. The gloves are off. No holds barred.
Enhanced interrogation techniques incorporate physical and psychological pressure of the detainee. These techniques include slapping, insults, stress positions, and sleep deprivation.
About 100 hours of sleep deprivation was a normal part of interrogation techniques.
When a detainee was not cooperating, other enhanced interrogation techniques were introduced to decrease the resistance. These include death threats, cramped confinement, and the infamous waterboarding, where the detainee experiences drowning and imminent death. This is apeshit. This is going crazy. We can't do this as the US.
Torturing someone to get a piece of the puzzle in order to stop attacks down the road? No. No. And I know as an analyst that there's plenty of other sources of information and ways to do that. I went to my management and I said, I'm not gonna have anything to do with that. Because I think that this is morally wrong.
It's an issue between people who wanted to do the right thing, people in the field who understand the field, and people in Washington who want to be warriors behind their desks, and the only fear they have in the war on terrorism is a paper cut. Hassan, by the time he was arrested, he was in charge of all global operations for Al-Qaeda. He knew exactly what bin Laden was. How many cells did he take down because of GSM? 0. He didn't give what bin Laden was. So, sleep deprivation, waterboarding. For what? To feel that we're tough. Being tough is being successful. Being tough is winning your war. Being tough is not breaking shit and being like a bull in a china shop. That's not being tough. That's being stupid. Unfortunately, what was going on with the way we're executing the war on terror, just decided to get the hell out of the way. I could not follow. So I left.
This was a difficult decision for anyone to have to make. On the one hand, it's not good to, inflict coercion on other human beings. On the other hand, it's unethical if you don't get this information and you have the blood of hundreds, thousands of Americans on your hands. You're torn between two things that are right at some level, but in contradiction. And most people who are at the CIA at this time, their attitude is, we hope no one else has to make such decisions in the future.
5 years since 9/11, and Osama bin Laden is still wanted. Officials say they're making the country safer for an attack, but are they?
Bin Laden was like a unicorn. A lot of people were claiming to know where bin Laden was because the rewards for justice on bin Laden was $25 million. And we were left with a lot of really bad sources coming in and telling us where he might be. And we were running down rabbit holes every time.
Bin Laden is sick, Bin Laden is dead, Bin Laden is on dialysis. All of that was in the intelligence stream, but that's because they were putting out enormous resources and nothing was close to panning out.
I have been following these fragments of dots, these clues that shift and disappear for so long, and we haven't found him.
So we never stopped looking for bin Laden. The hunt basically stalled.
It was a complicated situation. There were plots against New York, including plots against the New York subway. A plot to fly 10 to 15 airliners, blowing them up over the continental United States.
Bin Laden was in search of, what's my next 9/11? What will exceed 9/11?
There was reporting about Al-Qaeda's interest in weapons of mass destruction. Most importantly, in its interest in acquiring nuclear weapons.
He was looking not just at radioactive material, but then also crude toxins and poisons, so anthrax.
We knew that bin Laden had met with nuclear scientists in Pakistan. And when they said to him, look, the long pole in the tent is obtaining the nuclear explosive material, enriched uranium and such, he had said to them, how do you know we don't have it?
It was a high priority for the Al-Qaeda leadership, that it was being driven by bin Laden personally, and that there were real people and real efforts around the world associated with it. They needed something that was bigger and better than 9/11. You can't repeat yourself if you're a terrorist group. You always have to move to the next level. So the vision was what he described as the American Hiroshima, where this bomb crowned their efforts to defeat the United States.
والسعي الأمريكي وهذا واجبنا وإخواننا قائمون به أرجو الله أن يثبتهم وينصرهم.
I'm alive and I'm well. That's the main message of a new videotape from Osama bin Laden, first in nearly 3 years.
A radical Islamic website says a new video is coming from him, timed to coincide with next week's anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. If it turns out to be real, that he's still alive and secure enough to be making videos.
It had been 6 years since 9/11, and we had believed nothing. Every 9/11 anniversary, the only thing you could think about is that bin Laden is still out there. That was just the knife in your back. We just wanted to stop it. And it was so frustrating that we couldn't. It became obsessive. People were working just all the time. And yet we were constantly insulted.
We have an intelligence network that is so dumb they can throw themselves to the ground and miss.
Complete intelligence failure here.
The media was saying we had failed, and so other people had to be brought in to run the center because we were a bunch of failures.
The intelligence failures that may have led to the September 11th attacks.
The commission itself is going to have to sort through all of this finger pointing and come up with a report in July saying who should have done what and when.
People asking questions as if we were guilty. And of course, we all felt guilty, so that didn't help. Whether there was anything else you could have done or not, you question yourself all the time. Is there anything I could have done differently?
The commission investigating the 9/11 attacks came out firing this morning.
Specifically, the CIA's handling of the Al Qaeda threat before September 11th.
The only time I got angry was really after the 9/11 commission, when they blamed us. That didn't.
The commission says neither president had adequate intelligence.
How in God's name are you supposed to imagine a threat if the facts are being withheld from you?
Seeing the 9/11 commission report go on the New York Times bestseller list, knowing that it singled out the handful of us who had been trying, to the best of our ability, to have them accuse us of failing to imagine the attack, failing to connect the dots. It was so painful, and we couldn't defend ourselves.
I've lived with that for 20 years. And it's only recently that I've realized that it just doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what we did. Unless we had said date, time, place, and thwarted the attack, we were going to get fined. And so I did what I could, and that's all we could do.
Today, President Bush hosted the man who will be president in less than 2.5 months. When Barack Obama is sworn in on January 20th, he'll encourage a gorgeous couple. But today, it was one gracious couple welcoming another to their new home and new life.
What is the most urgent threat when it comes to security to Barack Obama?
The most urgent threat that he'll have to deal with is an attack on our homeland. I wish I could report that's not the case, but there's still an enemy out there that would like to inflict damage on America.
Taking out bin Laden was both about cutting off the head of the snake of Al Qaeda, but it was also about the closest thing that the United States was going to get to a victory in the war on terror. So when Obama comes into office, he gives a directive to double down on the bin Laden search. What was prepared was a kind of presidential directive to the CIA that's like, I want to do more to get bin Laden. I'm sure you're working on this, but move this up the priority chain, put more people on it, put more resources on it, and importantly, I want regular updates on this.
There was always a challenge included in every job that I took in Washington.
It was soon after I was sworn in that I went to the Oval Office to meet with the president. And he said, my primary task as the director of the CIA was to go after and get them on. My first step was to call the key people from the CIA and basically say, where are we? What's going on?
Under President Obama, I became deputy director of the CIA. CIA never stopped looking. We followed every lead.
We were trying desperately to figure out where Bin Laden was and not getting closer.
I decided to appoint a task force with no other responsibility but to go after Bin Laden.
Leon Panetta put an immense amount of pressure on you to show progress.
When you're an intelligence agency, what you've got to do is develop as many possibilities as you can that can open the door. And one of those possibilities came to us from one of our allied countries in the Middle East.
In 2009, the Jordanians had in their custody a physician named Al-Balal. He was arrested because he was espousing the views of the jihadists, the views of Al-Qaeda.
He had been writing online in support of Al-Qaeda's extremism. He saw himself as a violent member of the Mujahideen, someone who was going to fight on behalf of the state.
The Jordanians came to us and said, we think we would be able to turn him and use him as an asset against Al-Qaeda. Are you interested? We said, absolutely. His incentive at this point is not being in jail, and if he delivers significant Al-Qaeda leaders, significant reward. That resulted in the Jordanians sending him to Afghanistan to penetrate Al-Qaeda.
The agency's been called risk averse so many times in the past. There's nothing risk averse about it. This was a big gamble. And then it was as if he just disappeared into thin air.
Into the fog, into the ether. He went dark. Did he just run away? Did they figure out he was a spy and kill him? What happened? A long time goes by. First weeks, then longer.
Took several months. And then he reported back that he is with Al-Qaeda's number 2. Is that what we hear?
They actually got filmed with him being close to Zawahiri. It was crazy.
This is a potentially very big deal.
This would be an opportunity to get at the number 2. Maybe even more than the number 2. In life. For us, that's a huge opportunity. But before we would even think about operationalizing this opportunity, we wanted to meet him. We wanted to make sure that he was the real deal.
We set up a meeting in Afghanistan at a place called Post, which is near the border with Pakistan.
When you develop a source in terrorist groups, that's really hard. You're basically asking someone to flip on like their own blood. It's near impossible.
Imagine the thinking of the officers in Coast. A guy who might have access to the number 2 in Al-Qaeda is coming to see you. Do you want to put him through multiple security screenings, maybe turn him off? Or do you want to welcome him with open arms, make him feel like one of us?
Coast became such a big operation. And we were getting so close to a real lead on where Bin Laden was.
When he came into the base, cars can't just drive up. They're slowed down through checkpoints.
You go all the way to the end of the base, and there is a small compound where the core CIA people are going to meet with him privately.
They finally got to where our CIA officers were, and they all came out because they've been waiting for this meeting to greet him.
He's considered potentially the golden goose. This guy could bring us to where we've never been able to go before.
So they came out to the car.
This was something big.
This was a turning point.
And Dr. Abu Dujana Fusani, Jordanian. The Jordanian and the American intelligence services offered me billions of dollars to work with them and spy on Mujahideen here. But Alhamdulillah, I came to the Mujahideen and I told them everything. And we arranged together this attack.
Legion CIA team. Inshallah, we come to you through unexpected ways. Well, this is for you. It's not watching. It's detonator. You will be sent to the hell.
CIA officers located in Host were very excited about the possibility of being able to get a source that might lead us to Bin Laden. And so he wasn't searched, he was basically waved through.
There is the entire CIA team, contractors, special forces, analysts, base officers. They've all come outside to be there for his arrival. This is a potentially very big deal.
There is so much tension. He got out on the other side of the car. And our security people went around and said, take your hands out of your robes. And they got very concerned because he wouldn't do it.
They didn't understand that the asset was the bomb.
I was sitting on my family room floor, and I get a phone call. She's like, Tracy, there was a big explosion. I was like, what are you talking about? I don't think he even had the TV on, right? Like, I didn't know what had happened.
Now to Afghanistan. Tonight there are startling new facts about the suicide attack that killed 7 CIA officers. The attacker was invited to enter that base, and he was not searched.
This is for you. It's not watching. It's detonator. You will be sent to the hell.
Here's a man who'd never been seen by the Americans, and yet they let him get into this very secure CIA base. Then he is able to explode this device.
The flag at CIA headquarters flew at half-staff today for 7 of its own. Director Leon Panetta said they died far from home and close to the enemy. Too close, it turned out.
My colleague Jennifer Matthews was the CIA base chief in Host, Texas. We were like a cadre. I had been working with Jennifer on Al-Qaeda since before we knew it was Al-Qaeda. And Gina called me and told me Jennifer did. It was somewhere here. And I remember going to church and
the standard prayers to everybody who served in the military. I'm like, what about us? What about Jennifer?
It was just hard to hear the stream of people from her childhood, you know, her kids talk about her. Because of course they didn't know what she did. Mm-mm.
I remember going to the funerals of every single one of the CIA officers. And I noticed that as we were driving in very, very cold weather, I saw a family standing on their front porch with a sign that they were holding that said, "Thank you for keeping us safe."
I remember talking to their family members. The parents I talked to said, don't give up on the mission that cost our loved one their life. Don't give up on it. And the mission obviously was to continue the search for bin Laden.
فإني أقول للشعب الأمريكي إننا بإذن الله ماضون في قتالكم.
If Al-Qaeda thought that the coast attack was going to weaken us, they were dead wrong. It had directly the opposite effect. It steeled our resolve. Coast made it personal. Made it very personal.
We're getting closer and closer to the 10-year anniversary of 9/11. And there's an increased demand and desire to find bin Laden.
Osama bin Laden is still wanted, still continuing to haunt Americans. A $25 million bounty remains hanging over his head.
We've supposedly got spies and strike teams all over the place looking for him.
How could this guy still be out there?
We had our heart broken so many times with all these terrible deeds and almost thinking we were there. He's in this location, he's in that location. The military spun up more than once trying to potentially capture him, but it's never panned out.
It was so frustrating.
It also begs the question of just how intelligent our intelligence agencies really are.
The CIA at that point was under political attack from both parties, really.
Isn't it a failure of your administration? You had him captured, you don't seem to know where he is.
Well, and I think capturing or killing bin Laden would be extremely important to our national security.
There was an immense amount of pressure on CIA and the intelligence community as a whole to do more, double down on bin Laden and Al-Qaeda.
On the day of 9/11, I was working at the Pentagon. On my branch, I was the only sole survivor. I was badly burned, but was able to bounce back and keep fighting every day thereafter. How do you feel? I feel great. In 2009, a friend reached out to me and said, "Kevin, we would really need your help to be part of the bin Laden team, as its one and only mission, find bin Laden."
I told my team, every week I want you to come into my office and report to me what you're looking at, what you're finding, what clues do you have, what possible evidence do you have?
Where could he have gone if he fled Afghanistan? Where did he go? Is he still alive? We moved all these questions the whole time. And so when he made an appearance on television, it would be analyzed to death.
We started focusing on every aspect of bin Laden's media statements.
We would listen to bin Laden's tapes to see whether or not you could pick up the sound of something that might tell you where he might be located. The sound of a bird or the sound of industry.
Is he sending hidden messages? What's in the background that might give away where he might be?
ويأتي ظهور بن لادن بالطريقة التي حصلت عليه الجزيرة.
We also tried to trace how his videos were delivered to the news.
He had to have a way of getting messages in and out of wherever he was. We're not trusting any electronic devices or phones or anything like that, so they're probably going by hand, by couriers.
If we could find and locate, track a courier, that would potentially lead us to bin Laden's location.
CIA followed every lead. This lead about the courier starts way back in 2002.
We knew that there was an individual who was a trusted bin Laden courier, and great efforts were taken to identify that name.
Detainees provided fake names. Some said there was no courier, and others said there was a courier, but he had retired.
It was extremely difficult to unravel the lies about the courier.
And then in like 2002, there was an Al-Qaeda operative in the custody of a North African government who had been arrested and was being interrogated about what he knew, who he knew. And in that interrogation, he mentioned an individual who he said worked with bin Laden prior to 9/11 and worked with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed post 9/11, and who was a courier between the two. And he said the name of the courier was Abu Ahmed. That information, of course, we were very interested in. We asked KSM, still being detained in a secret CIA prison, what do you know about Abu Ahmed? KSM had undergone enhanced interrogation techniques. He was telling us pretty much anything we wanted to know. He had told us, yeah, I heard of Abu Ahmed, but he's not with Al-Qaeda anymore. He goes back to his cell, which we have bugged, and he told all the other Al-Qaeda operatives who were with him. Nobody talk about the courier. KSM was doing everything he could to protect the courier because he knew that Abu Ahmed could take us to bin Laden. So we are zeroed in on trying to find Abu Ahmed.
Bin Laden and KSM couldn't have picked a better person. He was exhibiting a lot of good operational security that made it very difficult to find him.
Eventually, we figured out he was Kuwaiti.
We pursued every possible lead, and we had no idea what he looked like. He was an enigma.
It was a long, hard, steady strain to try to determine his pattern of life, his movements, where he would travel to, what type of communications he was using, how he was using those communications.
We were worried about making mistakes that would inadvertently tip him off to the fact that we were looking for him.
All of that goes from 2002 to 2010. 8 years to find him, on the planet.
In the summer of 2010, we had a breakthrough moment.
We tracked his phone to a town in Pakistan, called Peshawar. And we were able to pick up a phone call. He was talking to somebody who knew him from the past. His friend was asking him, what are you doing now? I haven't heard from you. I haven't seen you. What are you doing? And he kept trying to say, no, I'm staying busy and working. And his friend just didn't give up. He said, well, yeah, but what are you doing? What exactly are you doing? And there was a moment of silence. And then he said, I'm doing what I did before. Immediately, the friend said, then go with Allah. It was clear that what he had done before is to work for bin Laden. We needed to have human intelligence on the ground.
People think about intelligence work as analysts reading reports. I mean the people on the street. As a task force commander, I was based in Kabul, and then I had places all over the region. We need intelligence that validated all the information. What do we think we know? What do we know we don't know? What do we see?
We watched the courier get into a little white SUV. There are a lot of white SUVs in Pakistan. And our CIA officers followed it from Peshawar to a town called Abbottabad. Finally, the vehicle pulled into this large house.
A bunch of indicators strongly suggested that there's something going on in this house.
This was very different from anything that we had seen.
What we saw was a compound that was much larger than any compound in the area. We learned that the courier, Abu Ahmed, had purchased the house in 2005 in an expensive part of Abbottabad with no visible means of income. There were walls that were 12 to 18 foot high, topped with barbed wire, and there was a balcony with a privacy wall.
Abbottabad is known to be a tourist area because of the mountains. So why would you put an 8-foot wall on the 3rd floor?
The security of the top floor is just weird. You know, you start putting these pieces together. This is someone who didn't want to be seen at all.
This was highly suspicious. Set off alarm bells across the team.
It was pretty clear that somebody of high value was located there. I immediately went to the President of the United States and briefed him on what we had found.
We first briefed Senior Department of Defense official Mike Vickers and head of counterterrorism at the White House, John Brennan.
Michael Morrell called me the day before just to let me know that this would be very sensitive information that was going to be passed to President Obama.
From this first meeting with the president, Leon Panetta comes in and said, we were able to geolocate bin Laden's courier and then follow him back, and then here's this compound.
I said, Mr. President, we had a very high suspicion that bin Laden might possibly be located there.
President Obama was cautiously optimistic that this might in fact be something that we had never seen before as far as an actual lead.
At the end of the briefing, the president gave us 2 orders. And Barack Obama was not the giving orders type. The first was, Leon, Michael, find out what the hell is happening in that compound. And number 2, don't tell anyone. This is the circle of trust right here. Nobody else in our government is to know about this.
We began constant surveillance, looking at everything that went on in that compound.
It's very difficult to get intelligence. There was no phone and no internet. The cell phone Abu Ahmed used, he didn't put the batteries in until he was well away from the bottom. He practiced extraordinary operations. Director Panetta came up with his own ideas for collecting intelligence. Why can't we put cameras in those trees?
Others thought, what if we could collect their garbage for a possible clue? But they would never allow their garbage to be taken out. They basically burned their garbage. We were working with a doctor to go to the compound, provide polio shots, and get a sample of blood. Our hope was to be able to use that to verify that it was bin Laden's family. The couriers refused to allow them to come in.
Over time, we began seeing women and children coming in and out of the compound.
Abu Ahmed and his brother.
But when we looked very closely at the satellite photography, we learn that there's a third family in the house. It never leaves the compound. The children did not go to school, unlike all the other kids in this particular part of Pakistan.
We identified by looking at the clothesline how many members of the family were living there.
We did have enough of a count, children and the adults, to create a high degree of suspicion on who this third family might be.
At one point, we saw an individual who was a little older who would come out of the house and walk in circles like a prisoner in a prison yard.
Every day, he will come out and walk in the garden. Every day. We called him the pacer.
Using what's called mensuration. We see a person, the sun is shining this way, it casts a shadow, measure the size of the shadow, figure out the precise height of whatever's making the shadow. The precise height was about the same height as Osama.
Literally the hair on the back of my neck stood up. Oh my God. We may have found it.
I had seen many of the other leads of bin Laden. They were nothing in terms of the same caliber of this one.
I remember saying, for goodness sakes, this could be bin Laden. In order to give me a facial. And they said, you know, it's very difficult to do, Director. We've got 18-foot walls on one side, 12-foot walls on another side. We can't get a good shot. And I remember saying to them, you know, I've seen movies where the CIA can do this. And we laughed. Everyone laughed. But they weren't able to get a clear picture.
Director Panetta puts an immense amount of pressure on the Counterterrorism Center to learn more.
One day, I was asked to come to the bin Laden unit at the CIA and give a briefing on interviewing Osama bin Laden. And I'm like, it's kind of an old story, but okay. I did the bin Laden interview in 1998. And it was the only interview I've ever done in my lifetime that kept getting bigger afterwards. Now I'm sat down with the CIA going through the footage. And I think they're going to be interested in what was the security like around bin Laden. How did he move in? How did he move out? Radio communications. So I'm going through it in a good deal of detail. And they say, do you have any extra footage of him walking around? Why would they want more film of him walking around? I had no idea at the time, but it turned out that they wanted footage to determine if the gait, the slight limp, the posture of the pacer matched bin Laden's walk from the closest footage that anybody had of him walking, which was him coming to that meeting with me in 1998 for comparison. But I had no idea about that.
Although Miller's footage showed there were similarities, it wasn't conclusive evidence that bin Laden was there.
Of course, I'm thinking that that could be bin Laden. Everyone was thinking it. It's a matter of proving it to the degree that a decision maker felt confident enough to take some action on that.
Every week they would report to me. Sometimes they would come in and say, we haven't found anything new. And I said to them, that's not good. That's not good.
As a survival mechanism for what you're dealing with at work, you become so detached from emotion. It was hard on so many levels. I was building these movies of memories of my son because he was getting ready to graduate from high school, and all these movies of things that he had done that I didn't remember. I had no memory of these events in my son's life. And I remember going into work that night angry. I had to really kind of grapple with, I chose to keep doing it. There was always a sense of we're not doing enough, working weekends, missing family members. And my mom passed away. And I had told her before she died, working on something really important, and hopefully you'll end up seeing it. And so when she died of cancer, the only thing that got me through my grief was having a really big responsibility. I knew we were making progress, but I was obsessed with building the intelligence case that bin Laden was in that compound. At that point, the chances of being able to acquire 100% certainty that he was there were extremely unlikely. There was also the fear that bin Laden could realize that he'd been discovered. Bin Laden could leave that compound at any moment, and so it was too much of a risk to continue to collect.
We were getting closer to actually making a decision about taking action against the compound. So the president wanted to know what were the prospects for us getting more intelligence, being able to confirm bin Laden's presence there.
We did not have 100% evidence that bin Laden was truly there.
It was a circumstantial case. There was not a single piece of direct evidence that he was there. I said, Mr. President, you need to know that the case that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction is stronger than the case that bin Laden is at a bomb.
You could have heard a pin drop in that room. This is a major national security decision. His political advisors told him that if this was a failed operation, that his public image would be diminished significantly.
So that to me was the greatest political risk as an operation that could have killed much U.S. service members, the kind of Carter rerun. When the Islamic Revolution happened in Iran, embassy gets overrun, a whole bunch of hostages get taken. President Carter ordered the helicopters into Iran to rescue the hostages, and they crashed in the desert. And a lot of people died, and just made him look weak, and made the U.S. look weak. The Carter comparison was like, this is a botched operation. The year before an election, Carter didn't get reelected.
I heard President Obama say, I don't care about the politics. It's been too long that bin Laden has been able to escape the hands of U.S. justice.
The president said, I would like you to prepare operations to go after this compound.
He says, I haven't decided to do this, but if we do, we're going to do it sooner rather than later. Prepare the plan.
The phone rang. It was the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He says, look, the CIA thinks they have a lead on Osama bin Laden.
His eyes lit up. This is a SEAL. This is like a dream come true.
The business I'm in is hostage rescue and raids on terrorist organizations, but this was the biggest mission, certainly in my career. The year earlier, I'd been diagnosed with cancer, chronic lymphocytic leukemia, but the cancer had not evolved to the point where it was taken away from my ability to command. As unfortunate as it was, it gave me cover for action, meaning that I had a plausible reason for going back to the States. So I flew back to DC and I met with the director of CIA, Leon Panetta, and he told me about this compound.
And I said, look, what I need you to do is to come up with an operation to go after this compound.
best people to do the job for the United States of America. We're gonna bring the SEALs in for the mission.
SEAL Team 6 is the Tier 1 unit in the Navy. First, we had SEAL Team 1, SEAL Team 2, and then around 1980, Commander Richard Marsenko commissioned SEAL Team 6. And the reason he named it 6 is because he knew the Russians would say, there's SEAL Team 1, SEAL Team 2, and there's SEAL Team 6. Where the hell are 3, 4, and 5? Which is good counterintelligence, right? The way that I say it is, it's not just a hat rack, my friend would make it. We just got back from Afghanistan. We're in Miami, Florida to do some diving and get a little bit of liberty so we can hang out with the boys on the beach. We're out there on the patio one night and we get a call that we're being recalled to Virginia Beach and we didn't know why. It was disappointing because the spin-ups never turn into anything. Just get briefed on a bunch of nonsense that doesn't have anything to do with me. And it sucks, man. We've been looking forward to Miami since I was in Jalalabad.
When I first brought them in, I brought them in off leave, and I could tell from their body language they weren't happy about this. They thought they were involved in an exercise.
We pulled up to a spot that was unimpressive. It was like a small schoolhouse, a one-story building, armed guard outside. We go in and sit down, and it's simply set up like a classroom. Like there's some whiteboards.
They brought them into the briefing room. The CIA briefer comes out, and he explains to them that they're going to have to sign these non-disclosure agreements, which again wasn't unusual because we did some pretty sensitive training.
When the officer from the CIA stood up there, and I heard her say the word Abbottabad, and I never heard of the city of Abbottabad. It almost gives me goosebumps right now. Like, this is a city in a different country you've never heard of. And then the commanding officer of SEAL Team 6 walked up as nonchalant as ever and just said,
"Gentlemen, we're going after Osama bin Laden.
This target is Osama bin Laden, most wanted terrorist in the history of the world." I thought, this is the most important mission in modern history. What an honor, what a great team to be a part of. One thing they said though is, this is time sensitive. We've got a couple weeks until there's 0% illumination in the lunar cycle, and we're gonna launch on one of those 2 days.
Gentlemen, this is not an exercise. We've got a job to do, and let's get out and start preparing.
Our job was preparing them for what they're about to do. It's giving them the tools to do what they have to do. And in this case, we did something a little bit different. We determined that we could literally build the compound as it exists for them to practice.
The CIA built us a mock-up.
The exterior looked like Osama bin Laden's compound.
So that we could have the SEALs come in and rehearse through their tactical movement on the objective. Helicopter pilots rehearsed their profiles. SEALs could fast drove down onto the top of a 3-story building and then in the courtyard.
We did that so much over and over, their wrists are starting to hurt, you're getting tendonitis. It was almost to the point where, look, we've proven we can fast rope. We don't need to keep doing this.
We knew the shape of it. We knew where the buildings were. What we didn't know is what did it look like inside.
Was it an open space, or did you walk into a corridor with a room on the left and a room on the right?
So the structure was modular. It changed every time they went through it.
They were so good about it too that they could break the compound down every single night just in case enemy satellites flying over the top.
The number of times they did their training, numbers over 100.
You plan and you plan and you plan and you rehearse and you rehearse and you rehearse and you look at every single contingency.
Everything that seems simple, like where in the helicopter are you going to sit? What are you going to sit on? Are you using this kind of a chair? Where does the dog go? Let's simulate that a car left. Let's simulate the fast stroke didn't work.
What happens if this guy gets shot? What happens if this room blows up? What happens if we're down from 24 guys to 12 guys?
I can tell you they destroyed things that had to be fixed. And we would then go back in and rebuild that.
What we do good, what we do bad, 12 hours a day, maybe longer than that, rehearsing and planning.
Then we go back to the barracks where we were staying, and we'd stand around the model and we talk about it. Is there going to be some sort of ridiculous contraption with a slide that comes out of the top floor into the alley? Should someone climb out of the sewage system? And one night, one of the bosses said, "What's the worst thing that could happen?" And the youngest guy in the room said, "Well, the helicopter could crash in the front yard." And we're kind of looking at him like, why would you jinx us like that? The main staging base for the operation was in Jalalabad on the Afghanistan side of the border. Between those 350 kilometers are all kinds of problems.
Risks were significant. You're flying in Pakistani airspace.
The Kobam was right near Pakistan's West Point, its military academy, and other important military installations.
So they were training military officers there in Abbottabad.
A lot of care must be taken because if a threat is detected, who knows what they will do.
President Obama was clear that we're not going to inform the Pakistanis because Pakistani intelligence has worked both sides of the fence for many years. And they had relationships with a lot of the militants and terrorist groups in the area, including with Al-Qaeda.
And so we could be in a war with Pakistan.
With an army, a special forces, an intelligence service, an air force, armored force, nuclear weapons.
Can we get those 162 miles undetected? So we take a look at where all the Pakistani radar systems are, what the swath of the radar looks like, and you're going to try to avoid that.
There were so many variables flying into Pakistan, everything from getting shot down on the way in to getting shot down on the way out. Even joking around, I remember talking to guys like, look, we need to take this more serious because this is a one-way mission. We're not coming back for this. This is the last mission we're going to do. And then we walked around a corner in a hangar and we saw these helicopters.
We had 2 classified forms of helicopters that were harder to detect by radar.
We were kind of laughing. I remember the conversation was, well, our chances of surviving increased just now because, you know, we didn't know we were going to war on Transformers. This would be the first mission with these new helicopters. I'm not sure how much testing they had done, but we knew we had some serious technology.
All these operations are very scary. That's why we bring machine guns. It's very high risk, it's extremely dangerous, and it has to work.
It was Admiral McCraven who came up with the idea that we're going to send you guys to Jalalabad, Afghanistan, just in case you get the green light, you're going to be there ready to rock and roll. It was always hard to say goodbye to the kids. And unfortunately, being a SEAL Team 6, that was something we were used to. That's just something I did with my kids. From the time they were babies to the time that I left the Navy, you got to say goodbye. You got to rip the Band-Aid off. And at some point, you just got to give them that last kiss, turn around, and that's it.
Did they know you were saying goodbye? Come back.
Well, they were smart enough to know. They had friends that their guys never did come home. So they,
The moment came to brief the National Security Council.
I know Obama very well. That was kind of one of my jobs, was to be the guy who knew Obama. You could kind of feel his body language, like he was going to be taking the on this. You know, he was so dialed in to this whole thing. The president polled all of the principals about whether they thought we should go ahead with the raid or not.
A lot of mixed views. A lot of people raised questions.
Secretary Clinton came out in support of it. Jim Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, and I were very supportive of it as well.
When it got to me, I just said, well, yeah, like you always said you could. But there were a lot of arguments against it. The vice president voted no. He did not think the intelligence was good enough, and he was concerned about the impact on U.S.-Pakistani relations. And Bob Gates, Secretary of Defense, was concerned about the safety of the force. Bob Gates, who's in the U.S. government, when we did Desert One, his opposition to it was a Desert One style helicopter. So Gates said this, and I was like, oh God, don't say it out loud, because what if that happened and then these meetings all get out, right? Look, I'm here talking to you, like, you know, it would have gotten out that, you know, someone raised this and, oh my God, you know, Obama ignored it.
The president listened to all of them, but said, let me take it into consideration.
President Obama said that he would make a final decision and would wanted to think about it more overnight.
The next morning, I remember it very clearly, it was at headquarters. And Tom Donilon, National Security Advisor, called me. Said the president's decided to go with the mission.
This is a big bet. We're betting with them on there, and we're betting that we can pull this off. But this is the best shot we were ever gonna have.
Yes, let's go.
Hours before the raid itself, there was a major event in Washington, the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And so we all decided that we would show up, otherwise if we didn't, questions would be raised.
Going to the White House Correspondents' Dinner that night was one of the strangest experiences of my life.
The President of the United States.
People who were involved in this, from the president on down, understood the importance of secrecy. And so the Correspondents' Dinner, I think, was in some respects a good cover because it was business as usual.
It's wonderful to be here at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. What a week.
It was difficult. I had tremendous respect for his ability to basically play the part of President of the United States.
It's good to be back with so many esteemed guests, essential government employees, non-essential government employees. You know who you are.
And then a comedian got up and made jokes about the Bin Laden issue.
People think Bin Laden is hiding in the Hindu Kush, but did you know that every day from 4 to 5 he hosts a show on C-SPAN?
Everybody laughed. And we all kind of deep down thought, if only you knew what I knew and what was going to happen the next day. The most classified operation in the last 20 years.
Thank you and good night.
The next morning was Sunday morning, so I went to Mass and used that opportunity to pray a great deal about what was going to happen on that day. Prayed that hopefully we'd be successful. I left church and went directly to the CIA.
The day of the raid, it's time.
A lot of the preparations in the counterterrorism center in the United States remain silent.
We're all on edge. My role for this was to be a communication relay.
Tina was in the cubicle next to me.
I didn't sleep the night before. It was tremendous pressure. It was the first time that I felt a shade of doubt. Having worked this lead and we're now sending troops potentially in harm's way, all of us felt a responsibility. It all became much more real. You were either going to have an incredible success or a horrible failure.
The SEALs were family men. My job was to make sure I put them in a position to be successful. And that's all I was worried about.
We've done the things with the wills, with the powers of attorney to make sure your family's taken care of in the event you die. But this mission is one where we're probably not going to make it. So I need to handwrite letters to everyone. And I remember handwriting letters to my kids. And it was more of, I'm sorry that I wasn't there for this, with tears hitting the page.
We got to the White House very early. During the weekend, you will have the individuals coming in for tours. But we canceled each of them because it would have sparked a lot of concern. If people walked into the halls, saw a lot of senior officials coming in on a Sunday. Many of us convened in the White House Situation Room early. You're anxious, you're worried, you're nervous.
It really had the feel of a command center. Obama's sitting at the head of the table. Then he's got basically his senior cabinet level people sitting around the table with Bob Gates, Hillary Clinton. And you had Leon Panetta on one screen. He's at the CIA and kind of their version of the Situation Room with a bunch of people. And then on the other screen is Admiral McRaven, who's in Jalalabad.
There was tremendous anticipation. Commander-in-Chief, he's the one who gave the order. He's the one who had most on the line.
So look on his face, it's really intense. But you can tell he was a little nervous too. We have connectivity with Admiral McRaven in Jalalabad, which is where he is.
I didn't get a whole lot of sleep before the mission. This was going to be a potentially historic moment. I just didn't want anything to go wrong. I told the guys, okay, we got a job to do, let's go get the job done.
Bin Laden's code name is Geronimo, and it was agreed to in advance.
There is so much tension that something could go wrong. And what if Bin Laden is not there?
I remember the call out that the helos were launched, thinking, here we go.
No one's ever flown these before. How do I keep my mind up and think of something simple? I know how to count. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm counting. Then around 5:57, I just remember saying, freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward, and freedom will be defended. That's what President Bush said on 9/11. And I don't know how I remember that, but I'm like, forget counting, I'm going to say that again. Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward, and freedom will be defended. That's when it's like, all right, I'm on this mission. This is the team, and we're going to kill them. They leave Jalalabad, and there's a period of time where they're flying in Afghan airspace, and you're breathing easy. And then there's a moment when they cross the border in Pakistan, and your worry level goes way up. When does the Pakistani military detect it?
The Pakistanis had shot at us before a number of times. So there was no doubt in my mind that if the Pakistanis picked up the helicopters and they thought it was a U.S. force coming in, they would engage us.
It was so tense. We were listening very closely to see if there's any indication that they've been detected.
And now we're at a point where this is where we find out if the technology works.
While these guys are in the air for this hour-plus helicopter ride in Pakistan airspace, there's this kind of interregnum sitting in a room in Washington because there's literally nothing to do. So Obama takes a break. It says, like, I'm going to go upstairs, let me know when I need to come back, basically. He goes up there to play cards. He compulsively played spades when he was nervous or just needed to distract himself. We're all just kind of sitting around. And we started to just chat about 9/11. People standing up, drinking coffee, like, yeah, this is what I was doing. There was this natural reversion to that day. You realize that kind of we were all somehow there because of Bin Laden. And then Obama comes back, and right across the hall, there's a small conference with the general monitoring this operation. And Obama, he goes in there, and so then everybody kind of starts to fill in to this tiny little conference. And McRaven basically just starts narrating. He's the voice of God for this whole operation.
A real anxious moment was about 2 minutes out from the target. That was a huge point of vulnerability. because Pakistani West Point was in close proximity, and it was a couple of miles from the major infantry battalion, so we could have hundreds of soldiers attack the SEALs. We would be surrounded by Pakistanis. The president was very clear that if you get in that situation, be prepared to fight your way out.
We didn't want to have some type of hostage situation of our forces being held by the Pakistanis.
The aircrew guy reaches over and he opens the door. We're looking out the window, 2 minutes away from Bin Laden's house, and we're not in a training area anymore. This place has electricity. We're in a resort part of Pakistan. The perfect plan is they're going to hover, we're going to drop guys up. My team's going to the roof and we're going to hit them like this. That's the perfect plan, and that's when all hell broke loose.
As the helicopters were settling over the compound, one of the helicopters, it kind of quivered.
It falls hard. It crashes.
It's that moment when your stomach comes up to your mouth.
I was only a few feet away from the bomber. He had this look of profound shock and concern. It was like, oh, the desert one day has happened.
I thought, oh my God, we may have lost people as a result of this lead that we've been pursuing.
Everyone's on pins and needles, waiting and waiting to see if there was going to be any type of response. Ultimately, the people in the neighborhood are responding, lights are coming on.
And in that moment, the operation was compromised on social media. A lot of people knew a helicopter crashed. They didn't know it was an American helicopter that crashed. They assumed it to be a Pakistani helicopter. From a counterintelligence perspective, that's a fail. That's an indicator and a warning also for Pakistani intelligence.
You could see the mission in danger. He said to Bill McCraven, what the hell's going on?
I knew the guys were okay. I could see them getting out of the helicopter pretty quickly. But what happened was when the helicopter came in, the down blast from that helicopter hit that 18-foot high wall and created a vortex, and the helicopter lost lift. It swings over and then hard lands into the animal pen.
Bill didn't miss a beat. He said, I called in a backup helicopter. We're going to breach through the walls. We're going to continue the mission. And I said, God bless you. Let's do it.
The guys moved from the down helicopter. Second helicopter comes in immediately after that.
I didn't know the first helicopter had an issue. My team was supposed to drop some guys off, and then my team's going to the rooftop. So we drop our guys off, just like in training, we lift up and then go right back down.
The second helicopter, the pilot didn't know exactly what happened. So to be cautious, he didn't know whether they had taken gunfire. So he lands outside the compound.
And so the pilot is telling us, get out.
Well, now the guys aren't anywhere where they're supposed to be based on plan A.
I'm supposed to be on the roof. And I remember thinking, okay, I guess we just start the war from here.
The good news is we had plan B, plan C, and plan D. Now they're trying to get into the compound. On the outside wall, there was what appeared to be a door. So as I'm watching, a demolition charge goes against the door. See the explosion, but they're not moving. Turns out there is a false door on this 4-foot concrete wall.
He looked back and goes, our failed breach is bad. And I said, no, this is good. That's a fake door. Nobody does that. He's in there. We know that the carport off to our right, that definitely opens because we've seen the cars come in and out. We'll just go below that door. So I came over the radio, failed breach, northeast corner, we're going to blast the carport. And somebody said, no, don't blast it, we'll open it. And so the door opens, and a glove came out with the thumb that I recognize. We walk in there.
Then within a few minutes, everybody is inside the main area of the compound. Start, guys got night vision goggles on. Clearly, the adrenaline is pumping. You could see their laser target designators on their guns. You can see them moving. You could see the guys sweeping the compound looking for threats. And then, I could see guys enter the 3-story building. And then that's all I could see.
There is so much tension. God knows what the hell's going to happen now. This is the moment when everything you plan, everything that you hope for in terms of being able to get bin Laden is on the line in the next 20 minutes. It's going to tell you whether or not this is a success or a failure. There was 20 minutes of silence. Probably the longest 20 minutes in my life.
During those 20 minutes, the SEALs on the ground first ran into Abu Ahmed and they shot and killed him.
So then we get in this house, the first floor. One of my guys shot one of the couriers and his wife. She jumped in front of him. The women are effectively turning into human shields. That's another indicator. He's here. Going up the stairs. We run across locked doors, call the breacher up, and the breacher blasted that door. So I'm about 6 guys back on what we call a train, and we're moving up the stairs. The guy in front saw bin Laden's 20-year-old son, Khalid bin Laden. Khalid jumped behind a banister. The guy in front, I heard him whisper a few different things to Khalid to confuse him. He said, come here, in 2 different languages. And it confused Khalid. Khalid kind of came out. And he shot him and killed him. So we're on the 2nd floor, and we want to go to the 3rd floor. And that's where bin Laden's going to be. But we need to clear that 2nd floor before we start moving. The guys start to peel off. So they're all moving out in front of me. And now I'm the last guy, which turns me into the number 2 man. So the 1 man's job is to point up the stairs. The 2 man's job is to tell him when we have enough guys. I want 4 guys. And I'm looking around. We have 23 dudes on the ground, several different houses, several different stories. You're gonna run out of guys, and we just did it. We were down to 2 guys. There's a curtain above these stairs to the 3rd floor, and there are people moving behind it. And the number 1 man can see it. He's like, these could be suicide bombers, but we can beat them. Oh, we gotta go now. Okay, we're gonna go be the suicide bomber. I'm tired of thinking about it. Let's get it over with. And I squeezed him, and then we went up the stairs. So we went up to the top of the stairs, and the number 1 man opened this curtain. People standing there, he tackled them. He's gonna take the blast. So because he went this way, I turned this way, and standing in front of me, 2 feet away is Osama bin Laden. It was one of those moments in life where it did slow down. He's taller than I thought. He's skinnier than I thought. His beard was gray, white, but I recognized his nose. This is definitely him. He's not surrendering. He's a threat, not just to me, but my entire team. He has to die. As time went by, it was so tense. We were waiting and waiting to hear any type of response.
There was hushed silence, waiting to hear. In some respects, it reminded me of a waiting room of a hospital when somebody is going to give birth. You're anticipating, you're worried.
It was a long 19 minutes. And then I get a call from the ground force commander.
The ground force commander went over his radio and said, "Forgotten country, Geronimo. We got
we know that means Osama bin Laden been killed by these forces. It's like, holy shit. And like, like nobody really says anything.
There was no applauding. It was a very, very silent room.
The silence is broken by Obama, who didn't move from his chair. And he just says, we got it.
When I heard that, tears welled in my eyes. And I looked over at my colleague who was up there with me. We just looked at each other.
Hearing that inside the space was surreal. For me, there was some closure there. Justice delayed, not denied. Justice delayed, not denied. We got him.
Oh my God, you know, this is it. I hoped that my mom knew wherever she was.
It was just a real sense of relief after a decade of effort to get them up. Events that day are forever etched in my mind.
It was emotional, but it only lasted for a couple seconds. Because in the heat of that moment, we were still focused on the SEALs and the helicopters getting back safely.
Obama still looked pretty stressed out. He stood up and he said, I want you to tell me the minute they're out of Pakistan airspace.
The mission wasn't over because we still had to get the guys out of Pakistan and back to Afghanistan.
No one takes a deep breath until these things are done. I'm standing there and look over Bin Laden's body's right there. One of my guys comes up to me and he goes, "You good?" And I said, "What do we do now?" And he said, "Now we find the computers. Come on now." And I said, "Yeah, you're right. I'm back. Holy shit."
The call from the ground force commander, and he says, "Look, we have found a treasure trove of intelligence on the second floor."
We're in offices with everything from old school tower hard drives to compact discs.
So I said, okay, get as much as you can. We need to start getting out of here. By this time, outside the compound, people were showing up because there was disturbance in the neighborhood.
We had an agency colleague who was the linguist. He was on the periphery of the compound. He was trying to keep them at bay.
My buddy who was the sniper outside, he's like, "I'm fully prepared to engage these people, so you better talk them out of it."
And I told the guy, look, I don't want to kill anybody unless you feel like, you are threatened. I was having a lot of anxiety. I said, can we pick this up a little bit? Make no mistake about it. We didn't take our eyes off the Pakistani radars.
We're finding so much good stuff that we wanted 32 minutes on the ground, but now we're pushing 40, we're 45 minutes. The closer we cut it to the edge, we might save a lot more lives. We might save an American city. We might save a city in London because of stuff we find here, something they're planning. So we got to just stick it out to the end. The amount of time on the ground was longer than anybody would want. At the time, a large crowd had formed.
And he said, nothing to see here. The Pakistani exercise. Don't worry about it. Get back to your homes.
And now we got to get Bin Laden's body in a body bag. We're bringing him back. They come out with Bin Laden's body to get in the helicopter and the backup helicopter. And they leave.
And they blow up the down helicopter because it had some sensitive material.
Watching that unfold was right out of a movie.
We're leaving the pilots up front, flying as fast as we can. The Pakistanis got over there. See radar turn on. We start seeing their silos open.
They launched a couple of F-15s, trying to intercept our helicopters on the way back.
An F-16 against a 47 is not a good fight. They can shoot us down. So I just thought my watch, and I got to get to 90. And 90 minutes means we cross the border from Pakistan to Afghanistan, and we can no longer be shot down because we've got F-15s on the border that can protect us. All right, cool. 10 minutes. We got to get to that 20 minutes.
Helicopters moving at low speeds across the terrain.
We're getting call outs from the ground of how far out they were from returning to base.
30 minutes. gotta get to all of us inside that center were kind of pushing the helicopters to fly as fast as they could. 60 minutes, gotta get to 90, not 70 minutes. I'm trying to keep my mind off of that, of everything. I started thinking about, in 1980, the Olympics, the Lake Placid. The greatest hockey team ever assembled in the Russians. They haven't lost a gold medal since like the 50s. And they're playing these young Americans who are just out of college. No business being on the ice, but now they're winning. 4-3, third period, you can hear the crowd. 10, 9, you can still screw this up in nerves. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. And then the pilot came over 85 minutes into the flight and he said, "All right, gentlemen, for the first time in your lives, you're going to be happy to hear this. Welcome to Afghanistan." When the helicopter makes it across the Pakistani border, the Pakistanis turn around. There's a huge sigh of relief. 100%. It's just surreal just to succeed. Because, again, we'd accept death on this mission, but it's nice to live.
When those helicopters landed back at Jalalabad in Afghanistan, that was the moment where all of us around the table said, mission accomplished, mission accomplished. Everything we had done, all of the planning, all of the work had paid off in achieving something I thought we never thought we would be able to do, which was to bring bin Laden to justice. And we hugged each other and congratulated each other.
Good job, National Security.
When the President of the United States tells you you've done a good job, you never forget that. You never forget that moment.
The day of the raid, my daughter was a senior in high school. It was her last concert. And my wife is saying, where are you? And I said, I can't. And she said, you can't? You can't take an hour? What you're doing is more important than your daughter? And I said, I gotta go, and I hung up. The rest of the day, she's sitting on the sofa trying to figure out how does this divorce thing work. I've been working so many hours, 7 days a week, no days off. My marriage was in deep, deep, deep trouble. When the president decides he is going to tell the nation, I call her and I say, turn on the TV. I don't understand. And she said, you got it.
Breaking news, President Barack Obama is expected to make a surprise announcement. We do not know what it's about, but we do expect it to be a huge announcement because this is very unusual.
I'm home and I'm in bed with my daughter and I'm reading her bedtime stories. Emily comes in, my wife, and she says, all the phones are ringing. I'm like, I'm reading the story. She's like, no, all the phones are ringing. That's never good.
The White House called informing each news organization individually tonight that there would be a statement sometime around.
Obama's like, well, I need a speech, and I hadn't written it. And so I was like, oh shit. And I turn around and I'm like, I need 5 minutes. And I'm like, oh shit, you don't talk to the president of the United States like that. And you certainly don't talk to him like that in front of like his whole cabinet, national security cabinet. But I was like, and he's like, I got you. And so we came up and we talked a bit about like, what do you want in speech? I've written thousands of speeches in my life. Nothing remotely approached the feeling of writing that. I think when I wrote that first sentence, the enormity of what I had the opportunity to do. I'm telling the world about this. It was frantic, but I was used to frantic finalizing speeches of Obama. He likes to edit to the end. Like literally, I've got his written edits on a draft, and I had to sprint to the teleprompter operator to beat Obama walking by me, you know. But then what was eerie is, you know, there's a very small group of press that's assembled for this. And then there's a handful of us, but it's this huge empty room. And so what you see on TV is just Obama walking down the long red hallway to the podium. And what he's speaking to is just some cameras, you know, like there's not an audience. Then we're just kind of sitting there at the back of the room.
Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al Qaeda.
I hear President Obama say Osama bin Laden. I looked at Osama bin Laden and I thought, how the fuck did I get here from Butte, Montana? And then it kind of get back and he's talking, and guys around me are like, say it that no one was hurt.
A small team of Americans carried out the operation with extraordinary courage and capability. No Americans were harmed.
I looked at Brent as Obama's talking. How long have you been trying to get to the mountain? And like, without missing a beat, he's like 15 years. You know, like he knew exactly in his head. Sudan to Afghanistan, and that was the kind of feeling of like, oh my God, there's so many people that have tried to get this guy.
It was nearly 10 years ago, but a bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history. And on nights like this one, we can say to those families who have lost loved ones to Al Qaeda's terror, justice has been done. Tonight, we give thanks to the countless intelligence and counterterrorism professionals who worked tirelessly to achieve this outcome. The American people do not see their work nor know their names. But tonight, they feel the satisfaction of their work and the results of their pursuit of justice. Thank you. And may God bless the United States of America.
After he gave his speech, I went back down to my office. And as I started to make my way out of the West Wing, I could see that outside it was lighter than usual for that time of night. And I could see throngs of people converging on Lafayette Park. And they were chanting, USA, USA.
People were sharing in the joy of what had happened. And I realized at that point, we not only brought justice to bin Laden, but in many ways, we had really brought justice to all of those victims whose families had died in the trade towers and elsewhere.
I go downstairs and I grab a beer from the fridge, and then I thought, this is probably more than a beer thing, so I grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the cabinet, and I started to head to the porch, and I stopped and I grabbed a cigar from the box in the den, because I thought, well, this is going to be a good night. Now I'm ready, and I'm thinking, well, here you are, about to celebrate, you know, the death of another person in a violent way, and are we more civilized than that? And I thought for just one more second, I said, you know what, fuck him. He died the way he was supposed to die.
The president was concerned about what we would do with bin Laden's body. The decision was that we would transfer the body to an aircraft carrier in the Indian Ocean and he would receive the last Muslim rites, but that he would be buried at sea, so that it would not be located someplace that could become a shrine.
The thing that I'll never forget is the military put together this photo album of the journey of bin Laden's body. Started with him just shot, and then back in Jalalabad, then face cleaned up. What I remember so powerfully about it is not like the picture of bin Laden's face shot off. It was the naval vessel. There's this body wrapped in a shroud being lowered into the water, just slipping under the water. I remember being very affected by that. After all these world events, this human being is just somewhere in the Indian Ocean wrapped in a white shroud.
The United States definitely won the battle after 9/11. No more attacks on the homeland at scale. Capture, killing of the entire Al-Qaeda senior leadership that was responsible for 9/11. But I fear bin Laden may have won the war. I think bin Laden weakened America. Trillions of dollars were spent on counterterrorism, a lengthy war in Afghanistan, a war in Iraq divided Americans. It's still playing out today.
I was beyond impressed with everyone who was involved in getting us to that point. But I don't know. I want someone who deserves to suffer in the way that they fear the most. I wanted him to die an old man, completely forgotten, to live to know that no one cared about him or thought about him or knew who he was. That to me was the worst thing you could do to him, to any terrorist. I just think people don't understand the power we have to destroy terrorism by not being influenced by it, by not being afraid of it, by not making decisions because of it. That is the greatest way you can neutralize it and destroy it. Just to say, F you, you are not changing who we are or what we do.
You see the turmoil of the world stirring that pot again, where it will cause tragedy, anger, excite emotions, and someone else will come along and exploit that. It's not the end of the story, but it's the end of this chapter, of bin Laden chapter.
I used to think that when bad things happen, that it was just random chaos. That bad things happen because you bring them on yourself. I found why. Let me take you as a field reporter.
It could be nothing.
I think we both know it's not nothing.
And I want the world to know.
Woman's died. Right now, we can't give you any more than that. That's all we got. Thanks.
Detective Harper, is it true you knew her?
I suppose with that reporter.
It's my wife.
So, you got any suspects?
Stop.
Persons of interest?
Hey, Ann, how you doing? You doing good?
Yeah, good, Jack.
Good, good. It's really great to see you.
The killer usually knows their victim.
Stabbed 40 times. That's premeditated. It's personal.
One of us might know who the killer is. The killer could be in this very room.
I didn't hurt her, Ann.
Do you know who did it?
I didn't do it, if that's what you're asking. There are two sides to every story. Ours and theirs. Yours.
You really think that I could do something like that? You really think it?
Mine. His. Yours. Which means someone is always lying.
No, it's no.
Officer needs assistance. Two suspects heading northbound on Genesee between the businesses.
Stop! 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 Now! Face down, arms to your side, now! Down! Spread them! 6 out of 43. Show suspects in custody. At the rear of 132 and a half Genesee.
132 and a half?
That's right.
I don't know how people get in these long up relationships, because you ought to be able to tell on the first date. Serious. People tell you who the they are. Like you sitting there with a woman and you just say, girl, you crazy. If she say, I know, everybody say that. It's time to get out right now. Let's stop right now. No order, nothing else. Let's go. Same with you ladies. You sitting there with a guy, y'all sitting there, this motherfucker got diamonds on, got a big Rolls Royce. You're like, so what do you do? And he's like, yeah, I got a lawn care service. And you done got excited and you finna get indicted. Both of y'all going to jail.
This whole shirtless thing, where does it come from?
It's like freedom and fun and middle finger to the world. I'm just playing with things.
All I'm asking is for you to behave like a normal person.
Maybe live life with your shirt on.
I hate to say it, honey, but we need to fit in at this school. We have up our game.
Who's this?
That's Kirsten Vanderfell. Hi, Matt Rose and Joint. Hi. Some hot gossip going around about you. What are you talking about?
My daughter just transferred into Barclay to 8th grade.
That was extremely triggering. I feel violated. You crossed the line with your big, fat mouth. Headmaster's office, suspension, our daughter hating you. And the pig requires a little lipstick. Well, who the f***'s running that?
Shut the f*** up, Isla.
Money moves, money made. Intention never late. What it takes to be great.
First and foremost, I was so wrong for the way I behaved.
It's so funny. I grew up in a trailer the same size as this. Why is that funny? The irony. You started this. It's up to me to finish it. Or finish him, whatever you prefer.
I prefer neither of those!
They might not see you like so. You're gonna go down in flames.
This was your idea.
Don't run away from it. You run right to get it.
This is the change I needed, and it's long overdue. This is who I am now.
I love you!
signed it.
Celebrate me, my birthday, my crowning day, mine and Holin's talk.
Who's the birthday boy?
Stavro Blofeld.
Is he here?
No, he's in London in prison.
How do you know for sure?
Because I put him there.
Experience of delight, surprise. Let us shepherd humanity with our movement.
I spoke him. Our little Russian scientist.
Have you got it?
I'm here.
I got him.
Here there.
Stay with him.
I see from my little eye. My little eye says hi. Now see. Now. We emerge from the shadows of stars and darkness. Here's to the end of our pariah. Oh, my bird, my brother. James Bond. Goodbye, James.
Gloria Dayton was a former client of mine. She was murdered.
This was the person.
Because that always works out well.
Somebody wants Julie to go down for Gloria's murder.
I didn't do this.
Why so many people want to take a swing at that face?
What can I say? I inspire strong emotion.
It's just a day's work.
Let's get to work.
Who's that guy?
There's some ex-cop who hates you.
Did they just take a number?
Somebody's gonna end up dead because of you.
Mic drop.
We are walking into some very dangerous territory here. Lord knows you can use some protection.
You be careful. I mean,
You're dealing with people that play a very dangerous game. We're not backing down the fuck.
This is a war, Paul. You get to choose which side you're on.
The job is to find out information one way or another. If you go for it, you better not miss.
I'm gonna find who did this. I'm gonna find him and I'm gonna bury him. It's just a day's work.
Elizabeth Smart was a 14-year-old girl. Family said she'd been taken from her bedroom in the middle of the night.
I saw this cut screen, and the window was wide open. My wife screamed, "Call 911."
Elizabeth was living a very normal life in a very nice neighborhood.
The community had mobilized. Everybody was willing to just drop what they were doing and search.
We love you. We want you to come home safely. Good.
This case captivated the nation. There was a sense of, is it the family? Could he be involved?
My wife said, law enforcement don't believe that you're telling the truth. I had nothing to do with this.
There's so little evidence to go on. But there was a witness to the kidnapping, her 9-year-old sister, Mary Catherine.
I knew I'd heard the voice, I just couldn't remember where I'd heard it from.
We had a family create a list of everybody who'd been to the Smart home. One of them was Richard Reese. He was a violent felon.
What do you know about the kidnapping?
Don't. Now I'm the #1 suspect.
Mary Catherine was very likely the key to finding Elizabeth. She would have been asleep. She would have been groggy. Maybe she didn't realize it had been received.
You were in there, you were doing this, and she woke up.
One particular night, for some random reason, the name popped into my head.
Mary Catherine, I think I know who it is.
We weren't going to just leave it to the authorities.
She's out there. We could not give up.
I just wanted to tell them I'm still alive.
I need you to fight one last time. Life has been so unfair to you. Your childhood was taken from you. You've been attacked, manipulated by terrible people. But you never let it break you. Fight for the days on the other side of this fight. Fight for a world beyond Hawkins. Let's have this kid.
Mother of God.
John Elway, the most gifted quarterback to ever play in the National Football League.
I can still remember feeling that responsibility and the expectation.
This is his third loss in a Super Bowl.
They had to sacrifice everything to be the best.
Everything changed for Colorado in 1983.
Been the most spoken about day in American sport.
John Elway.
John Elway. First time I saw him practice, I'm going, this guy's a freak.
He is going to be one of the greats of all time, I
He
think.
got the nickname the Duke of Denver. The Duke of Denver.
Duke of Denver.
He was shy, sweet, he's not neat and pigeon-toed, and all of a sudden I'm dating this superstar.
His first year, I'd never seen anybody get beat around like he did. Everyone was expecting Johnny was going to take us to the top right away.
With Dan's offense, it was different than I was used to. My head was spinning.
Was he overblown by the media? Part of the growing pains of playing in the NFL.
People have no idea how hard this guy worked to be who he was.
For me, looking over the last 50 years, my whole life, winning was the most important thing to me. I think that was at the sacrifice to my family.
Depending on whether he won or lost, there was definitely a mood shift.
I used to be pretty intimidated with him.
This comes with the territory.
My parents' marriage was crumbling.
He really started to pick up on the gravity of the situation.
You got death threats?
All the focus and the media and everything was on John.
He helped a city transform itself. Well, let's be real. He was going to have to win a Super Bowl to be coronated.
John took it personally. He had one goal.
The frustration level grew.
Before he's ever going to be considered a great quarterback, he has to win one of these things.
Those are the sacrifices that athletes make to be great.
Greatness is more than just a performance on the field.
And my dad always said, you can't take the easy way out. So this was the moment.
This ad came on for the Cottman's Place Mall. It was this woman, she was a mom, and she was talking about how great her life was about to become because it was going to be so convenient for her to get everything that she needed for her kids, for herself, if only she could live there. I just had this idea, oh, we should live in the mall.
Live at the mall. It seemed like a very absurd fantasy and a great way to plow through all of the negativity that had been built up for years and the loss of our homes and the homes of like hundreds of people. And so Adriana and Andrew and Jay and myself decided that we would go live there for at least 1 week.
Welcome, James. It's been a long time. Finally, here we are. What does it say?
You tucked her in.
This is the last time I had 2 stranglings in one day.
Well, cheer up, maybe tomorrow will be stabbing day. I don't like this. It's the same MO as a softball girl. Sophie Clark, 22. What are you doing here?
I'm working my sector.
Since when?
Since I asked for a new sector, I want to learn from the best. So where's the course at?
It's fine. That's great.
You want that?
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Rizzoli. Okay, thanks. We got an idea on the first base.
Brother, I should have told you. I know. Since my face gets squirted, I thought I could pay these guys back at a sure thing. How much do you owe them, Vince? Big number. You have this. You don't pay back a loan for 3 years. That's such a big number for you, big deals. Here's the background. Everything's falling apart. My family, the restaurant. I'm holding on by the skin of my teeth. I didn't budget for you. Your brother has a real problem. You understand what this all means, right? It means it's on me. 20 grand a week until we're square. But if you're late, one single day, that's it. The restaurant, it's ours. I gotta ask, what happened to your shoes? I got a sweet number on the bus. You sold your shit. I'm chipping away at it. I'm doing my part, Giggles. You're skinning. And what are you spending it on? We dragged us all into this. What are you gonna do, baby? Huh? What are you gonna do? If we're gonna be lying to everybody else, we need to be honest with each other, Jake.
I've made a lot of bad decisions in my life. But worse than I made joining the mafia. When people think they're mafia, they think of New York or Philadelphia was 100 times more brutal. Prostitution, loan shopping, drugs. Come on, guys, it isn't just the money, it's the life itself.
It was really fun.
In 91, there was a power vacuum. Who was going to be the new boss?
He looks to John Stanford was get away from the old ways.
The other truck was led by Joey when they met.
Joey was a personable guy. Dresses well, he's cocky.
Don't be a bad guy, does it?
Police say the 33-year-old monster is ruthlessly consolidating his power. Stanford didn't understand the thirst that Joey Marina had.
It was just a matter of, okay, somebody's going to get hit.
It was basically like the Wild Wild West. Bang them up, shoot them up, bodies were flying everywhere. John Stanford narrowly escaped an assassin's gunfire.
This was unprecedented.
Everyone is at risk.
It was just kill. And that's what it did.
The FBI took the whole operation to the next level. It had to be stopped.
When you go undercover, you're on a tightrope and there's no safety there.
So we had great surveillance, interception, but we needed this one break. Oh my God, that's a home run.
What is
because of most of the descent into hell.
She could come apart. One way to find out.
I thought we were keeping under 6,000. Shut up.